Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the formal part of our board meeting. And as I told you yesterday, it's my hope that we can move through this agenda very quickly. So I am going to keep my remarks fairly short. I want to begin by thanking President Ammons and his staff for hosting us at this meeting and all of the hospitality that they have shown, and I appreciate it very much. Very nice, thank you. Would you like to say anything?
Well, it's always good to have the board and our colleagues from across the SUS on the campus, and I think this meeting, as all of them have been, very informative, and we look forward to our next time hosting you here on the campus.
That's great. You're going to have a couple more spotlights today. I think you're going to give us a couple of reports, so looking forward to it. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for your participation in these meetings. I am hopeful that our meetings are efficient, substantive, and meaningful, and that we are not just taking up space and time because we think we have to have a meeting. But as I wanted to take this time because this is the last in-person meeting that we're going to have before the legislative session. So I thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit about our legislative program and kind of how I'd hope that we could all move together. At our last meeting, we agreed and adopted by this board with everyone's input our legislative priorities. And our last meeting was in November, and we had just come from the governor's press conference in which he announced his initiatives with respect to tuition and other matters. So I would say in listing our priorities, we really have equal priority with supporting the governor's tuition initiative, which has been introduced in the Senate by Senator Ken Pruitt and in the House by Representative Will Weatherford, and will be moving through the legislative process, I'm given to understand, fairly early on, which I think will be extremely helpful to us in many respects if we could get that completed early. And it would send a very good signal nationally as we are getting more into our chancellor search. Of equal priority, again, will be to try to manage our budget and mitigate any potential cuts further from where we are today. And then thirdly, and for the four institutions affected, but or five institutions, I guess, everybody has agreed that they're on board to help, and that has to do with our medical education. The two new medical schools at UCF and FIU are at critical junctures in their accreditation process. It's very important that they show the proper level of state support in order to complete that process. And they were not able to obtain the state funding in full on their second year, and so therefore it's very critical this year that we try to see that they get the approximately $20 million, 10 apiece for each of them. But as you recall, when we approved these two medical schools, we were very clear that we were not doing it to the detriment of our existing schools, and that it is very important that we continue to fulfill that commitment. And so therefore, University of South Florida and the University of Florida, which are the two most mature programs that we have over time expanded their enrollment at the request of this board and other leaders in the state. And as a result of these budget cuts, they have now found themselves in a situation where they're pushed to to the end and can't be pushed further, and they really need to have some unfunded needs met. And so for those 4 schools, they have all told me that that is their number one priority, and as a group, we have all agreed to work towards trying to help them. The 5th item in that same category is New College, who has yet to receive the $1.8 million for academic and administrative support costs that they should have gotten for when they were split off from the University of South Florida. And for that school, that little bit of money is a lot of money. And so we put that in that same category and same priority, because that school is clearly a jewel in our crown, and we want to make sure that we keep it that way and that they are treated as they should have been when that separation came. And then our last priority, it's a big one, but it's not nearly in the same category, I don't think, as those others we've mentioned, is to make sure that we can try to grab onto as many matching funds for our Cortellis and other matching fund programs that we possibly can. I know there's not going to be too much non-recurring, but we might find something. But those are important to our donors. We need to keep that going. The legislature seems to understand that. I was up here a couple of weeks ago during the last special session, and the handwriting had already dried at that point, so I began to talk to a number of people, not about what was going on then, but what's coming up. And I got very good receptions from people on the needs for funding higher education, and and also the need to fund these medical schools. And so as I went through these numerous meetings, we began to talk about the potential for other revenue raising. I don't know what will happen, but what I am trying to encourage is that should there be other revenue sources, that we try to latch on to a portion of that for medical education, because it is so important to the overall health of the state, for lack of a better term. It's very good for economic development. It boosts the stature of our institutions, and there is a tremendous amount of investment already made in these schools. And so if we're fortunate enough to do that, it will make it a lot easier for us to maintain where our status now. But that may not come to be. So we all have to work together to do the best that we can for all these priorities. I think the first thing will be the tuition bill, because I think that's going to come up first. And let me just speak a little bit about that. Had the opportunity, of course, as has everyone, to read it and review it. And we had an opportunity to meet with various people yesterday, and I believe it's fair to say that the sponsors are quite happy with the way the bill is, and discourages activities in that attempt to amend. And if we go through that process, I think we're putting the whole thing at risk. So I would encourage people to please, since this is Chancellor Rosenberg's last meeting, please talk to President and Residents John Delaney or myself or anybody on the board before you might want to get involved doing something on that. It's a very tenuous situation. We want this to pass. It's a big, big deal. And yes, there are things about it that we maybe would want to be better. There are other things we maybe want to add, but we'll have an opportunity to do that either later this year or next year or something. But the way the bill is now is a tremendous step forward, and we need to appreciate what we're getting, and we need to understand that it's also an opportunity for us to set aside 30% of those additional revenues for need-based financial aid. and to address some of these issues that were brought up in the Commissioner's report, because we can establish scholarship programs that don't have those same rigid Pell Grant requirements and hit that group of people that they talked about who don't fit in any of those groups. And I think those are things that we need to seriously think about. But I encourage people to please stay with the program. Let's work together. Anybody that's got separate bills or things that they want to be doing, we need to know about those, because we want to get them in our message, because we're all going to be working together. Am I seeing any? I want some bobbleheads out there. But, you know, we've absorbed about $290 million in budget cuts over the last 2 years. That's a large, that's 13% or more of the general revenue side, and that's a lot of money. So we recognize that the tuition bill is going to help us. It's not going to help us too much the first year, but as time goes on, it will be better. So I think the legislature is recognizing that there's just not enough money to go around, and perhaps we'll find some other revenue sources that are acceptable, and maybe we can be first in line for some of them. We also just read that, I just read this morning, of course, that the stimulus package in Congress passed the House last night. I assume there'll be a number of changes before it comes out, but at least you can see there's some direction with maybe 150 million going for, or is it billion, going for states for education, billion. I get those M's and B's, boy. Going for education, plus there's a $2,500 tax credit for college education, which I think is a big benefit to us. And so there's going to be some things there perhaps that will be helpful. You always have to wait and see what the strings are, or whether it's a matching deal, because in our case, if we needed matching funds, then we're not going to be much help because we don't have any funds to match with. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, there should be some money to help us enhance some of these programs, and so we look forward to that and work towards that, helping that. I know that Dr. Matchin called to tell me he was not able to attend this, but that he was going with Senator Ring to Washington to meet with Florida's legislative delegation on the contents of this package. So we should get a report when he returns. I do want to take a minute, Joe, and congratulate the Gator Nation for their third football
On behalf of the university, I take all credit.
I thought I saw you out there.
I trust everyone has bought their Gator shirt and hat because we need the revenue.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, congratulations to everybody with the football team, because everybody did well, and we had a lot of people in bowls, and some people won and some people didn't, but still, there's a lot of school spirit out there, and sports are helpful for that, and it does bring people together, and we all, at least in my house, me and my cats, we all root for the Florida team unless they're playing the team I went to school, where I went to school. But I always vote, I'm always rooting for any Florida team. So, with that said, it's time for me to say a few words about Chancellor Rosenberg. You know, at our November meeting, he announced that he'd be stepping down in February. This is our last meeting before that happens. We had a nice reception last night, and I appreciate everybody coming, and I know that he and Rosalie do. And I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for the service that he's given to us and to the citizens of Florida for the last 3 years. We found him in his provost seat at FIU, and asked him if he would help us in the role of chancellor for a while. And the board was on wobbly legs. They're getting stronger every day, but they're still a little wobbly. But he's helped us through some of the hardest times, and I believe that we can say that he probably had no idea of the challenges that he was getting into, nor did he understand the true, even though he's a political scientist, I don't think he had any idea what the word politics really meant. But you got to live it.
Yes, I did.
So, under the leadership of John Dasberg and with the help of the Pappas Group, we were able to begin the Forward by Design initiative, and Mark was very strategically involved in that, and has, I think he can take credit for the distillation of our strategy and the progress that we've made so far. Been very involved in the creation of the compacts, and I think we're going to find with this tuition bill that even though some universities think that that's all a pain in the neck, it may come out to be the best pain in the neck, because we can probably meet most of our accountability requirements through the use of that tool, and maybe then eliminate several other reports that we're all required to do. But he's been very savvy about the importance of partnerships of the university system with the business community, and has fostered much better relationships with the Chamber of Commerce and the Council of 100. These Florida leaders now have assumed as one of their top priorities the recognition of the value of the university system to the economic health of our state, and they are key supporters of ours. Were last year and will be this year. And that was further confirmed yesterday in a few of these meetings that I attended. We've adopted debt management guidelines for the system and made the Division of Bond Finance comfortable. I know that some universities wish that it were easier, but we've still got to work through the bureaucracy that exists and make sure that those folks are comfortable that we're on the right track. But most importantly, Mark has always kept the students in the forefront of his mind. He's worried about their needs and how the university is allowing their experience, and they've always been his top priority. So he always says, it's all about the students. What can I tell you? It's all about the students. So Chancellor, for all of these projects and everything in between and countless other things unappreciated, we thank you very, very much. And the hundreds of people who look to you for your leadership, we say thanks. Good luck to you. Be sure you call me, because I'm going to miss that barking dog. I want to hear it. And so you must know that this is not the end, that you'll have this resolution. So I want you to come with me to the podium while I read it. Whereas Mark B. Rosenberg has provided dedicated and effective service to the State University System of Florida as the first chancellor formally selected by the Board of Governors from December 2nd, 2005 to February 13th, 2009, and whereas Dr. Rosenberg, through his enduring commitment to the students and to the 11 universities in the SUS, has been the pivot person, boy, my eyes are getting bad, for the system, advancing its priorities in the legislature and throughout the state, carrying these burdens with dignity and steadfastness. And whereas Dr. Rosenberg, recognizing the need for a strategic vision of the state university system, worked with key board members and consultants to provide the roadmap through Forward by Design, which remains the basis for the board's strategic initiatives in system structure, access to the baccalaureate degree, and workforce and economic development, ever cognizant that a strong university system is key to the continued success and well-being of the state of Florida. And whereas during his tenure as chancellor, facing the challenges of difficult economic times and budget reductions, Dr. Rosenberg has always been grounded by doing that which was in the best interests of the state university system. And whereas to all his activities as Chancellor of the Board of Governors, Dr. Rosenberg has brought his dedication and unswerving commitment to students, assuring excellence and quality in public higher education in Florida. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Governors meeting in the Grand Ballroom at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee on this 29th day of January 2009 do hereby commend Mark B. Rosenberg for his commitment to the Board of Governors, to the state university system, and do wish him success and happiness in all his future endeavors. And be it further resolved that the resolution be presented to Dr. Rosenberg as a small but a token of the board's appreciation and thank. And furthermore, we'd like to present to you this beautiful plaque that is presented to Mark B. Rosenberg in appreciation and recognition of your distinguished service as Chancellor of the Board of Governors, State University System 2005 and 2009, with everyone's name on it.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I know we have to approve the minutes, Madam Chair, so I won't take too long, but I want to thank our board members for their commitment. I was thinking that this is actually the 7th anniversary of this board, and a number of our board members have stuck with us from the beginning, and I'm particularly grateful. And I know the voters, the 2.8 million voters who created this board, are grateful for those of you who've stuck with us from the inception. And that's Governor Dasberg, Governor Parker, Governor Roberts, Governor Zachariah, and Governor Temple. Some couldn't be here today, but they're the originals, and they're the ones who really deserve the applause and the appreciation from us, those of us who are committed to our universities. But on reflection and review, I did want to note for the record that Carolyn Roberts, who is one of the founding members, to the best of my recollection, and we did an analysis of this, has never missed a meeting of this board. And to the best that anybody can remember, never missed a meeting of the Board of Regents. So I think in particular, I just want to thank Carolyn for that kind of a dedication. Sheila McDevitt mentioned, and I want to reinforce her appreciation to Governor Christ. He has helped us immensely over the last year and a half. We need to thank him and show our appreciation to him and encourage him to continue to do the right thing. Dean Colson has been critical there, but he has a staff, the governor has a staff who have worked closely with us. Also, as Governor McDevitt mentioned, in my mind, a critical partnership that we need to sustain is with the business leadership of the state. Because in the final analysis, it is the economic well-being of this community that we represent. So the Florida Chamber, the Council of 100, and the associated industries all stepped up, have stepped up, need to continue to step up. And so I urge you to maintain that partnership. And then finally, as our chair just mentioned, Senator Pruitt and Representative Weatherford are stepping up. And they're doing, hopefully, a very courageous and important thing for us. We said in our strategic plan that it was critical for us to get appropriate and predictable funding. And so while we don't yet have the first part, we're getting to the second part, and that's where we can be grateful to the Senator and Representative Weatherford. The budget, we haven't mentioned, but I do want to share with you as a matter of both thanking you and making sure you're informed. It is true that over the last 2 years, you all have taken a major hit and I know that the presidents and provosts and the faculty are trying to figure out ways to maintain the level of services, if not enhance them. As for our Board of Governors office, this year we haven't mentioned, so I'd like to mention for the record, 6% cut or a $331,000 budget reduction. We lost 3 positions. Since the fall of 2007, our board general office has lost 12 positions and $1.2 million, or we've taken an 18% reduction. And I'm particularly grateful to our staff that has really redoubled its efforts in the face of very difficult conditions to recommit to the cause of helping our students to get a quality education. So if you would join me in thanking our staff for all the hard work that they've done in the face of very difficult conditions. Now, as for the coming legislative session, I just want to reinforce again what our chair has mentioned. We did meet with the provost yesterday. If we are going into a 10% budget cut, this is going to cut into the bone of the state university system. We will regrettably see amputation of programs that we would regard as near and dear to our communities and to our universities. If we amputate, we're going to deny timely graduation. We're going to diminish the quality of our product. But I do believe, even with these difficulties, that we are turning the corner, because as the chair of our board illustrated, there are a lot of good things happening in the face of these difficulties. So we're turning the corner. We're not out of the woods. These cuts are going to delay our inevitable rise. They'll take a heavy toll, but I see this system rising. Your universities will rise, and I think our students are going to get an even much better education with some of the changes that are afoot. The federal stimulus package is only a plug. There may be some cash there for us in the short term, and you need to urge your representatives and senators to continue to support it. We need to keep you informed about it because it definitely will have an impact upon your decision making. And then finally, students, from this seat, working with you all, it's really, I've had an incredible opportunity to lay the foundation, and a foundation for a system that could serve our state and our students well. We got to keep our eyes on the prize, and that's quality universities, quality educations for our students. So I want to end where we began and to talk briefly about students. A recent survey reports the following on freshman students nationally. And it occurred to me that 1990, it's interesting, 1990 is the year that our freshmen were born. So, you know, it kind of dates us, and or at least me, I'll speak for myself. This is the year they were born. And here's what they're thinking now, this freshman cadre nationally. About 43% report that financial aid is important or essential to choosing a college, 43%. Nearly half expected to work to meet their college expenses, although a larger percentage of that are already on grants or some form of assistance. There is record political engagement, so I think we can be happy about that. This is an engaged group of kids. About 85% of our freshmen nationally report that they frequently or occasionally discuss politics, which I would think would be a good thing. And finally, since, as Governor McDevitt pointed out, that our universities are not just about the life of the mind and learning, but they're about community and having fun, the percentages of freshmen who consumed alcoholic beverages is the lowest it's been in 43 years of data collection. So that's also a very positive point. But as we reported to you today, something that's alarming as it relates to the state of Florida, thanks to the work of Paul Dosal and Lasse and our staff, that is that we left $24 million of student assistance on the table because our low-income students did not apply for Pell Grants. And frankly, that's unacceptable. And somebody said to me earlier, well, how did this happen? Truthfully, it's a shared responsibility. Our high school advisors have to do a much better job. But I think our financial aid officers, our deans, our provosts, our presidents have to do a much better job of making sure we understand financial aid and we can get the message out. Our board can play a key role in that, and I hope that you will continue, particularly through Ann Duncan's committee, to look at that. Truthfully, the more we do for our students today, the better our state's going to be tomorrow. Finally, in closing, I want to thank, Rosalie and I want to thank this board for its support. I want to thank Sheila and Carolyn and Ava for their leadership and commitment. I want to thank Florida International University, President Maydick and Provost Berkman for loaning me out, in essence, and saving a space for me, as difficult as I would think that has been. And Rosalie and I want to thank you for the wonderful reception last night. Our staff has exhibited incredible professionalism and determination to get the job done. I also want to acknowledge here the lifetime commitment, it seems like a lifetime commitment, to this board or its predecessors of the lady sitting to my right, Mikey Besta-Burge. I don't think Mikey's ever missed a board meeting, maybe going all the way back to the Board of Control in the 50s. But if you join me in thanking Mike, please. I also want to thank John Delaney. As I said last night, he is courageous in stepping in. Like me, he didn't know what he didn't know, and he'll find out. Welcome to my world, John. But the result of John Delaney stepping in is more work for the excellent provost and staff at the University of North Florida. So I think all of our board would like to thank them and Mark Workman, you in particular, for stepping in. There are a lot of people here in the Capitol and throughout the state who care about our students. And we've had different ways of expressing this care and concern. Sometimes we disagreed, but I respect them all because I think they carry the same passion and have the same purpose that we do. Being your chancellor has been a privilege and a blessing. So I want to thank you for your patience and your commitment to me, but more importantly to our students and to our universities. Thank you all. Thank you.
Anybody have any
Hello?
comments? You can speak.
Hello?
Judy. Yes, Judy?
Can I be heard? Can I say a word?
Yes.
This is Judy's phone.
This is Governor Solano on the
chose
phone.
this precise moment to chime in. I'm sorry that I can't be there. I just wanted to let the Chancellor know that the faculty have a resolution commending all he's done for the state university system, and we will be getting that to you later.
Thank you.
The governor preempted us at the last meeting, and the pneumonia bug has preempted me at this meeting. And it's very unfortunate because we saw the chancellor as really being someone who understood us, worked with us, and we want him to know how much we're going to miss him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? I think everybody had a chance last night. Let me just, a couple of things that I meant to say and I didn't, going back to the tuition bill. It's very important for the Board of Governors to have in place the regulations to implement this, and so I want everybody to be on notice that we are in the process of drafting them and we will get them around for comment, but we've got to hurry that process along. We cannot have just unnecessary wordsmithing because the governor is not going to sign the thing into law until these regulations are adopted. So it's important that we're working on it, and we've already got one rough draft that I just got yesterday, and I'd say in the next week or so we'll get them around to people, maybe next couple of weeks. That's very important. And the other thing that's very important is just to remind you that in that bill, you all will have the opportunity to develop plans that will allow you to price different types of programs differently. And so that can be utilized in looking at these duplication issues that we were talking about, and allow you to be competitive or to decide maybe that in the right program or whatever. But there's a lot of flexibility in this bill. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to get creative with how we attract and focus on our programs. So I just wanted to leave you with those thoughts and hope that we can all march forward together this year. I think we're going to have a good year. Okay, the first item on the agenda, I'm going to do that in just a minute, but I'm going to tell you that item number 4 is being deleted because our speaker was unavoidably detained and unable to get here. So again, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Everyone has had them? Have you had an opportunity to review? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? Second. Okay, is there any objection? Hearing none, show the minutes adopted. I would like to go out of order for a minute and take up the consent agenda. Item number 8, please. These are all Board of Governors regulations that had been approved for notice. We went over them in November. There have been no comments. I would like a motion to approve all of them.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on any of these? So many as favor the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, those are adopted. That's A. Then we would have to repeal.
I just wanted to move approval of the Board of Governors Foundation meeting minutes as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. Let me do this B first.
Absolutely.
Since we're on here, that we're repealing the veterans benefits for inmate students, which was noticed in November because it's included in another regulation. Can we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, any objection? All right. Governor Perez has moved that the minutes of the Board of Governors Foundation be approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Governor Martin, is there any objection? Show them approved. Thank you. Okay, the next item, Dr. Ammons, you're on stage. We are going, it's been my practice to try to feature some area of excellence from each university. And this time we're focusing on the Florida A&M University biosecurity challenges posed by invasive species. And I am very anxious to know what that's all about.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, colleagues. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Moses Cairo, who is Associate Professor and Director of the Center for Biological Control in the Florida A&M University College of Engineering Sciences, Technology, and Agriculture. The Center for Biological Control is a 100% federally funded research center whose primary mission is to generate, apply, and transfer innovative, ecologically based solutions to pest problems affecting agriculture, natural resources, and human health. In the 9 years that the center has been in existence, it has made significant strides in teaching, research, and outreach, centering around the growing threats from invasive alien species brought about by the globalization of trade and transport. The center currently supports both master's and PhD students. Dr. Cairo came to FAMU just over 3 years ago from the Center for Agricultural Bioscience International, where he served as director and regional representative for scientific and administrative management, serving stints in Kenya and England. He has published over 24 peer-reviewed publications, 6 books, and presented over 60 technical and/or conference papers. He is active in state, national, and international professional organizations. He has participated in expert working groups for the International Plant Protection Convention in Rome, the United Nations Environment Program, and conducted several consultancies for the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. So I'm pleased to present Dr. Moses Cairo.
Welcome, Dr. Cairo.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to thank President Emmons for that most gracious introduction. I wish also to thank the board for this opportunity to speak on a subject that has occupied quite a large part of my working life. Although problems posed by invasive species go back many years, it's only during the last 2 decades that the serious nature of the threats to biosecurity have come to the fore. If you could up there. So what are invasive species? An invasive species is a species that has been introduced into an ecosystem where it does not occur naturally. But a key part of that definition is that it also has the potential to cause harm or actually causes harm. Invasive species are found in all taxonomic groups, from plants to insects to vertebrates and microorganisms as well. I had on that slide, although it doesn't appear very clearly, you have Melaleuca on the top left, which is a major problem in the Everglades and other wetlands here in Florida. Of course, citrus greening has been very much in the news in recent times. Looking on to the right at the top is the Asian tiger mosquito, which originates from Asia and got into Texas in the mid-1990s and has since spread to other parts of the country. Giant African snail, just to give you an idea of the broad nature of these problems. Essentially, both natural and managed ecosystems are under threat. And in fact, invasive species do occur in aquatic, terrestrial, and marine environments. If we could have the next slide, please. So, in terms of economic impact, there have been a number of estimates, and perhaps one of the more recent estimates by scientists out of Cornell show that invasive species cause up to $120 billion in losses annually. Now, estimates from here in Florida, for example, show that invasive species do cause a loss of up to $179 million every year. And just to really emphasize the fact that these losses are serious, I look at one specific example and look at it from a perspective of the amount of dollars spent in actually trying to eradicate citrus canker. Between 1995 and 2004, nearly $600 million were actually spent on trying to eradicate that problem, only to finally give up. So this, next slide please, these examples just show how serious the problem with invasive species actually is. Now, why is Florida so vulnerable? And I think there are a number of factors that you need to consider in thinking about that. Obviously, the key factor is globalization, the tremendous growth in trade and transport, which has contributed to the chances or opportunities for invasive species to be inadvertently introduced. But there's also the fact that Florida is fairly strategic. And just to highlight that point, nearly 85% of the live or living non-indigenous plants coming into the United States come through the port of Miami. And with this, it sort of shows you the kind of, the strategic nature of Florida in terms of trade, but also the kind of risks that are faced here. And then, of course, there's the climate and geography of Florida, which makes it possible for some of these species to establish fairly quickly. So what are we doing at the Center for Biological Control? Just to step back and say one word about the center. The Center for Biological Control is a partnership between the Florida A&M University and 2 USDA agencies, the Agricultural Research Service and the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Now, in 2006, we developed our strategic plan, which has three major components, looking at research, developing human capital, and outreach. And just thinking about it from a research perspective, we have three main areas of focus: invasive species, ecological crop management, and issues to do with agrobiodiversity. Next slide, please. Now, just homing in on invasive species, we have activities which could be roughly put into three categories. And we've put those three categories being prevention, early detection, and rapid response, and management and recovery. And in a sense, those three categories capture some of the efforts or the main strategies for dealing with invasive species. Ideally, you want to be able to prevent the entry of species into the United States. That's usually the most cost-effective way. So we have activities along those three major areas of strategy in terms of mitigation of invasive species. And of course, our training and outreach activities are integrated in all three areas. Now, in terms of prevention, we focus on offshore pest mitigation, invasion biology and risk assessment, and capacity building, mainly in context of our trading partners, because we feel if they're better able to deal with commodities that are coming here in terms of reducing the number of species, that gives us a better protection in terms of minimizing the number of risks or species that will be getting onto our shores. We're also developing diagnostic tools, and we're also looking at minimizing the spread of some of the invasive species that have become established recently. Now, our third area is where we are looking mainly at species that have already become established, and our focus has been on developing biologically based tactics for dealing with them. We're also looking at issues of economics, particularly to start really advising the decision makers in terms of how they should deal with some of these problems. And since biological control is one of our major areas of focus, we're also undertaking research looking really at the issue of safety of biological control. Because in recent times there have been concerns that biological control, introduction of organisms for biological control poses risk to the country. If we could have the next slide. So what I'd like to do now is just to quickly go through a few examples of some of the things we are doing, and I look at them from the context of those three areas. In terms of offshore pest mitigation, our major focus is we're looking at species that have been identified by the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service as high risk for getting into the United States, and starting to do research while they're still out there. And this is an example of this kind of work. This particular pest, passion vine mealybug, is an Asian species. It's already in the Caribbean, which makes it really likely to get into the United States. So we are conducting research in Trinidad, and in fact I have a PhD student working out there, so we can strike the two stones, giving students the opportunity to actually get that global exposure, but also contributing to useful outputs in terms of research. So we have started doing this kind of work. We're now moving to start another project in the Dominican Republic in this particular area. And the results from this particular research is already yielding good results that are being used for developing contingency plans. Next slide, please. We're also training some of our partners in the countries that we work with. We're also linking up with other agencies to develop projects that will help countries out there to really prepare themselves to deal with invasive species. Next slide, please. In terms of diagnostics, we are looking at developing tools that are going to enable people to identify some of these problems much more easily. So essentially linking our expertise in taxonomy with modern computer-based, computer technology to develop these tools which will facilitate that process. And we have already put out a few products in this area, and are now collaborating with a number of other Floridian agencies to develop a resource for palms. Next slide, please. The cactus moth is an example of, actually, it was a biocontrol agent it's a South American insect that has naturally spread from where it was released in the Caribbean into Florida. It's threatening indigenous cacti. There's also a high risk that it could spread into Mexico and the southwestern part of the United States, where cacti are a major component of the ecosystem. So we have a big project going on. The idea is to try and stop its spread westwards. And it's getting pretty good results. We're also working with the Mexicans in that context to really help them prevent entry of this particular species. Next slide, please. We're also working, I'm sure you've probably seen the issue with the honeybees and the collapse of colonies. One of our scientists, Dr. Kanga, has linked up with a private company together with the Agricultural Research Service to develop a product, a biologically based product that will kill one of the introduced pests of honeybees, which is one of the factors that has been identified as a contributory factor to the bigger issue of collapse of colonies of honeybees. Next slide. We are working also on agricultural crops and have for a long time been working on developing biologically based approaches for control of introduced disease vectoring thrips. And this is actually quite interesting because some of these pests introduced problems just compound the issue. The picture on the extreme right is actually tropical soda apple, which is an introduced weed from South America. Now, some of the introduced thrips actually use it as an alternative host. So part of the research we are doing is to try and link control of the plant plus controlling the actual thrips on the tomatoes. Next slide, please. We are also looking at management of introduced plants. This slide here shows Cogon grass, which is an introduced grass that, of course, can build up, especially in disturbed habitats. We're also doing some economic analysis to see the exact impact that this weed is having. Next slide, please. So in summary, and I'm sorry to have to rush, but I was told you needed to keep within the 10 minutes. But the issue of invasive species being a serious biosecurity threat, there's no question. They're causing tremendous harm in terms of lost dollars. And I think we have positioned ourselves well in the Center for Biological Control in terms of forming the right kind of partnerships and really capitalizing on our if you like, competitive advantages to really develop effective projects against invasive species, and essentially linking these activities in context of the three areas or the three mission areas for the land grant university, which is research, training, and outreach. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cairo. Let me just ask you, can you identify a real success story from this program?
Oh, yes. The work, for example, with the cactus moth has developed the techniques for actually minimizing its spread, and now the research is working at keeping the pest from moving westwards and then eventually trying to start pushing it backwards into Florida and hopefully eradicate it. Now the work with introduced thrips, for example, has yielded results that actually have been wrapped up into actual management programs for these pests in tomato systems. The offshore work, for example, the work with mealybugs came in handy because about a year ago there was a scare that one of those mealybugs had been reported in California. But the good thing was we already had amass quite a lot of knowledge, which could then be used to deal with that pest. So that demonstrated the value of actually having this kind of work.
It's very interesting, and thank you very much. Does anybody have any further questions? Sure.
It's very interesting, and I want to thank you very much, and I want to mention that the President, I think this is very appropriate because so many people don't recognize the land grant mission of FAMU, and thank you for this presentation today.
Yeah, it might really be interesting sometime to have University of Florida and you talk about that side of your mission together and kind of look at some of the common type things that you do, because I know they do a lot of stuff as well with insects and vegetables and fruits and things like that, which I have seen because they have a place in Hillsborough County that I've gone to.
We actually have some joint initiatives that are going with the University of Florida, especially through Extension.
That would be an interesting program someday. Go ahead, Jim.
Dr. Cairo, thank you. Just very quickly, did I hear you say that 90% of the invasive species come through the Port of Miami?
No. About 85% of traded plants coming into the United States come through the Port of Miami. So essentially, you know, ornamentals and what have you, which in a sense homes on the risk, because a lot of these may have live.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. Okay, our next item, Governor Duncan and Trustee Chair Rick Walsh are going to give us a report on their shared services initiative.
Good afternoon, and hopefully Rick and I can be a little interactive on this discussion. But as you recall, the chair had asked us to take a look at what were some best practices on shared services. Again, by shared services, we were not focused on centralization. We were not focused on one size fits all. And really, I think Rick did a great job at kind of tasking the group with not getting bogged down on all the things that won't work. We did a little case study on a couple things that we thought were good examples of why maybe not to do it, but we did them from an educational perspective, not a dwelling on the past perspective. And the group and UF, UCF, Florida Gulf Coast, FIU, and FAU have all been great and involved. And I do hope, and I think it's my understanding that they have been communicating back through the provost and the finance people with all of the universities. And so by no means is this meant to be an exclusive group, but it's just meant to be these were the ones that somehow were in the wrong place at the wrong time and got tapped to have to do the some of the rolling up their sleeves on starting some of these initiatives. As we look through, and you can see in the thing, I don't think I need to read you everything in the package, but they really have kind of focused in on three main items right now between the sustainability and energy management, builders risk management, and office supplies, that with the hope, again, not that this is the end all of the discussion, but that let's focus on things we can do quickly, we can get wins, we can learn from, and that we can then leverage from as we may tackle some other lists. You'll also see on the second page there is a list of a bunch of the other ideas that have been kicked around that are being looked at, and by no means just because it's not on this list of three doesn't mean we're not suggesting it's something that should be looked at in the future, but again, in the essence of let's get some quick wins and let's pick some ideas that can make a difference. These are the ones that appear to have emerged. Rick, do you want to add any more philosophically here, or do you want to?
I would just say this is a fun project for two reasons. One, when you say shared services, it absolutely strikes terror in the hearts of presidents and other universities.
I like that
working
part.
together. And secondly, it's fun because you actually can find some things that are going to save us some money and establish some best practices that we can all learn from at our own pace. We've all done that in our businesses, and it's a way to look and see where can we leverage scale, where can we leverage opportunity, where can we leverage best practices so that everybody gains. So I think I really want to commend the staff that's been working with us and the people from the universities who have weighed in on this have been extraordinary, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if anybody has any questions on the specific programs, but if so, feel free to reach out to us, or if there's any information anybody else wants on it. But I mean, we're continuing to press hard and fast on seeing what we can get done on these items right now.
Governor Duncan, one of the things that has been on my mind to talk to you about, and I haven't gotten to it, you've got on here, and that's builder's risk.
Yes.
And given the fact that we're going to try to be spending a lot of money quickly, I think that's something that we should really focus on, because you can, on a shared service basis, save a lot of money doing wraps. And I actually had some people that I know very well that approached me about how would they go about making a presentation to somebody, and I've been going to ask you all, so this, I'll just give Ann their name, she can contact them.
Okay, we will tackle that, yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it is. Okay, any questions for these folks? This is a great project. Oh, Governor Edwards.
I know last year we were trying to identify in terms of actual dollars what we felt the savings to the entire system was. Do we have any figures on that now?
You mean from the things we've already done? Or from what's the potential from these initiatives?
From some of the things that have already been in place.
I thought they had pulled that at one time, Charlie, but I don't know off the top of my head what that number is. We've really been focused on what hadn't been done. We haven't been looking at the past side of it.
I don't remember the figure, but it was in the millions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, I also have a question, and it's regarding a concern that many students bring up on all the 11 campuses, and maybe an opportunity to generate a little revenue as well, and that's recycling. I don't know if that's been an idea that this committee has touched upon.
No, that's a good one, though.
It actually has, and you'll see it in some of the
Sustainability.
You'll see it in the capabilities at campus level, both around energy, around recycling, and others. One of the things, just to make sure everybody's clear, when I said what you can do this and leverage the elements, the base elements, without affecting the unique brand. So this isn't a branded threat of any kind to anyone. So as you find opportunities like that, the fact that we have a way to share it now and let people use it or not use it, when you start seeing the savings that are realized, and those will roll up, I think, Governor, that we'll be able to show the metrics on this stuff, because that's a key element of this, is being able to show how much this is saving whom, because that's going to be the incentive for others to use it. So there will be metrics attached to all of the stuff that comes forward.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you all very much. Moving along, great work. Dr. Ammons is back in the spotlight again to give us a report on his presidential work group on financial aid.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. Last fall, Chancellor Rosenberg, in a discussion with the presidents, asked three of us to look at how we might best manage financial aid challenges that are and can be linked to tuition. He appointed President Hitt from UCF and President Madick from FAU, and he asked me to chair the task force. I'm also grateful for the assistance from several staff members from FSU, FAMU, and the Board of Governors office staff, namely Provost Abel, Ann Blankenship at FSU, Roland Gaines, our Vice President for Student Affairs here at FAMU, Marcia Boyd, Director of Financial Aid at FAMU, Rosalind Fuse Hall, our Chief of Staff, and Dan Cohen-Vogel, who is staff of the Board of Governors. We met to outline the issues and asked for data to be collected and analyzed regarding the needy students in the State University system of Florida. This work required surveys of all SUS financial aid directors to discern how need is addressed on their respective campuses. As we embarked on this work, it became obvious pretty quickly that the first order of business required us to establish a common definition of need for the purposes of data collection, particularly for comparison purposes within the Office of the Board of Governors. So as we worked with the financial aid directors, everyone agreed that they use the Pell Grant eligibility standards in various formats. We respect the autonomy of each campus to address need in accordance with the profile of their respective student pool. Therefore, a baseline for data collection was needed. This led to our first recommendation to use Pell Grant eligibility as a consistent minimum basis for determining need for collecting any financial assistance information from SUS campuses. Next, we began to analyze the data related to the sensitivity to tuition increases, and most of this work was conducted by a subgroup of the staff members. The analysis revealed that although a large number of students apply for financial aid assistance, we found that a significant number of students, about 22,000 of resident undergraduates, though eligible, do not submit the appropriate forms for consideration for funding. This results in an estimated $24 million unclaimed aid that could be used to address this need. If more students were encouraged to apply early and each year, then this would permit the campuses to use other campus-based funds to address even more student needs. Further, most campuses use the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA forms, as the pool of students to be considered for additional financial assistance to meet student needs. Therefore, the task force offers its second recommendation, namely to create a communication strategy that encourages more students and their families to apply early and annually. Finally, we discovered that when we speak of financial assistance for students, we tend to think of low-income students or the other end of the spectrum, the scholarly students. Our analysis discerned that these two groups will usually have most of their need met because of their eligibility for Pell Grants. The low-income students or our scholars will qualify for state merit-based funding, such as Bright Futures. What we found is that there is another group that is price sensitive and tend to be overlooked. This group represents about 37,000 undergraduates across the state university system who are from families with incomes between $40,000 and $80,000 annually and represent what we call core of our student populations. And with the current financial crisis besetting families across the state and the nation, this group is ever growing. As noted in the report, nearly half of the unmet financial need in the state university system of Florida is found within this group. Further, the Board of Governors information brief that Dan Cohen-Vogel referred to in his report earlier today is a part of this report and is consistent with the work of the Board of Governors Strategic Planning, Academic, and System Oversight Committee's work on the Forward by Design initiative regarding financial access, where the brief was discussed again earlier today. And again, this brief agrees and supports the task force report finding. I think more importantly, this report is consistent with the access commitment that the system wants to reiterate to the members of the legislature. Therefore, we hope that the legislature would take heed of this growing group of families and their need for additional assistance, which federal funding like Pell and state funding such as Bright Futures do not address. Therefore, this task force makes its third recommendation to encourage the Board of Governors to have campuses review their respective financial assistance for core students and families. Again, those families between $40,000 and $80,000 a year that are non-Pell eligible and are sensitive to tuition increases. Once again, I want to acknowledge and thank President Hitt, President Maydeek, the task force staff members, and the financial aid directors for their work that contributed to this report. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. And Dan Cohen-Vogel and I are happy to address any questions that you or other members of the board may have.
No, but I appreciate your validating my common sense. Because I knew there was this core group out there, I just didn't know what to call them.
Well, that's what they are. Thank you.
Sure, go right ahead.
In this economic time that we're experiencing, and we all see people whose life drastically change as far as their family income, I mean, in the middle of the school year or just very quickly, is there any way for students to be approved? I mean, do they have to have the last year's, what do they have to have? The numbers from the former year, previous year from their parents, whomever supporting them? Is that what they have to apply for Pell Grant, right?
Where's Dan?
I guess I'm just asking, is there any way, if their situation changes quickly in the middle of the year, parents lose their jobs, whatever, do we have a safety net for those students? So,
I think it would, well, I'm going to let Dan come in too, but I know here at our institution, each year the students' parents have to submit their income tax information, which qualifies them for federal assistance. But also here at FAMU, one of the things that we have been able to do in a small way is to help those students who have fallen upon hard times, and it would come from institutional funds.
that was my question, because I know how you apply for the Pell Grant once required, but the next question is how we help these students find their situation changing. Joe?
At the University of Florida, and I suspect this process is similar at the other state institutions, we encourage any student whose family circumstances change, they experience some sort of dramatic change or financial catastrophe, to come into the student financial aid office where a counselor would sit with them, evaluate the changed circumstances, and their need package can be adjusted at any time. And in fact, we are constantly adjusting need packages because, for example, if a student suddenly gets a $1,000 scholarship on some basis, then that causes a recalculation of the aid package. So we are actually very responsive to changing circumstances, and we encourage the students to come in if they have changed circumstances.
Do you think the students are aware of these opportunities? Because as we saw on the Pell Grants, many of them don't apply.
I think this has been a concern nationally last fall because of the rapidly changing circumstances of so many families of students in school. I think universities have made a greater effort to communicate with the students that they should come in. Whether or not our message has reached everyone, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Governor Duncan.
Briefly, I thought I read something in, I don't know if it was the Clips or the Tribune, but Dr. Wilcox, doesn't USF have a pretty aggressive program as well that's focused on this current economic time and kind of the work program? Can you do a 30-second blurb, Ralph, on that one?
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Governor Duncan. At the beginning of this year, anticipating some deepening economic challenges and the impact on families, the President introduced a program called Don't Stop, Don't Drop that has really established an office that bridges between our foundation, our financial aid office, and an ombudsman's office in the President's office to identify some of those challenges, as Provost Glover mentioned. Some of the economic challenges students and families are facing today really outside of the realm of traditional thinking relative to federal coverage or even state coverage of need-based aid. So we've had to look at some special cases. I think we've all read about the increasing incidence of food stamp usage by students today in public universities, and that should be signal enough, I think, to the severity facing them.
Madam Chair, maybe as we kind of look at the other Pell issue, we can kind of bring that together a little bit as far as some best practices that are happening on this in our discussion through the committee.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful because it might allow us to try to develop some guidelines for that group that's fallen between the cracks that maybe the universities could use and benefit from.
If I can make a comment.
Governor Stiver, who wants? No. Oh, he's first.
Sure.
It seems to
Then
me
you.
that I recall a figure that we're 42nd. I'm pretty loud, Mark.
That's for the,
It
for
seems
the,
to me that we're 42nd in the United States in student aid. Are we still 42nd? Are we improving?
I don't think so.
where, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Where we don't stack up is the national data as it relates to affordability. And that is the data, perhaps Dan would like to report on it more thoroughly, but that's the data that we get an F in affordability, as do most states around the country because of not enough need-based financial aid available for low-income students. So we're in a negative trend line. Where we're very strong, of course, is in merit-based financial support, and where we're very weak is in need-based financial support.
Governor Meyer.
There's another area of concern that I want to present, and I don't know if it was discussed in that committee meeting, but it's the area of a full-time, even part-time working student that takes class at night. And especially in the urban universities, you see this issue a lot where either they recently had lost their job or it's just difficult for them to pay a lump sum of their tuition at the beginning of the semester. Has the idea of payment plans been addressed at all or brought up?
In our committee, we did not address payment plans, although I do think that there are some institutions that in fact do that. I think it's on a university by university basis.
Correct. Thank you.
Any more questions? Good report, Dr. Emmons. Thank you. Gave us some more things to work on. Great. All right, we're going to now go into the committee reports. First committee is the Chancellor Search Committee. Governor Roberts.
The Chancellor Search Committee met on January the 22nd in Tampa. The purpose of our meeting was to interview 3 firms that we felt were in a position to fulfill our search commitment. At that meeting, we unanimously selected R. William Buck and Associates. We were very impressed with Bill Buck. I believe he could meet our need, and it did not hurt that he also was less expensive than the others. That was not why we chose him, but in these economic times, we were pleased with that. And we will keep the board informed as to our next meeting. At this time, we are with Mr. Funker developing a timeline, and you will be kept informed as to our progress. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any questions? Okay, moving on. Governor Zachariah, Trustee Nomination and Board Procedures Committee, you have one action item, I think.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we had a meeting this morning, and there's one action item is to approve the notice of intent, the Board of Governors regulation establishing the powers and duties of the University Board of Trustees. So there was a motion that was made and seconded.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, motion carries. I'm sorry, Chair. You can do it again.
That's all right. Okay, moving along to Governor Martin, Strategic Planning and Academic System and Structure Committee.
There were 2 conference calls we've had on October 30th and also November 20th addressing a number of academic programs. The first one I chaired, the second one Governor Marshall chaired. And we have a number of items today that we'd like to seek your approval. And there are actually 4 groups, A, B, C, and D. And I guess, point of clarification, do we take them all together or individually? What's the pleasure of the board? Individually?
I think individually would be better.
Okay. The first 5 or a group of advanced degree programs. The first item is PhD program, Geosciences at FAU, Doctor of Nursing Practice at Florida State University, PhD program in History, University of South Florida, PhD program in Government, and a PhD program in Sociology, all at the University of South Florida.
And a point of clarification. Should we go ahead and add Farm D into this motion?
We probably should.
Yes. So the 6th program that would be listed there would be the Farm D. So I would entertain a motion to...
Second.
It's been moved in second.
Somebody who's favor the motion, say aye. Aye. And I mean, just comment on that. We, in the committee, did take a vote to waive my policy about not taking action on the same day, and I'm assuming no one on the full board objects to that. Okay, just for the record. Go ahead, Governor Martin.
Item B, approve termination of PhD program, Industrial Systems Engineering, FIU, was approved by the committee in November. Move approval.
Second. Any objection? Hearing none, so show it adopted.
Item C, approve the annual report for the Florida 21st Century Technology Research Scholarship Enhancement Act programs. And you have a copy of that in your folder.
Move it.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any comment or discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
And the last item, item D, approve limited access status for BE program in graphic design, University of South Florida.
So moved. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or comment? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted. Okay.
Madam Chair, that is my report.
Okay, thank you. Now it's Governor Duncan and Student Affairs and Campus Life Committee.
Yes.
One action item.
One action item. There's a notice of intent that we need to approve for vote at our next meeting to look at the textbook regulations. This has been a well-discussed, thought-out plan to help reduce the textbook cost for our students, which is very important, and had a lot of buy-in and dialogue up to this point, so I would move approval of the notice of intent.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the notice of intent on this regulation. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted. Anything further, Governor Duncan?
No, thank you.
Okay, Governor Parker has had to leave early, so Governor Perez is going to give her report on the Facilities and Real Estate Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Facilities and Real Estate Committee met yesterday. There are 6 motions to approve, and you'll have to bear with me because several of these actually require reading into the record. First is a motion to approve the 2009-2010 SUS fixed capital outlay legislative budget request as amended in our packages.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, Madam Chair.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the PICO list? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
Thank you. Subsequent motion to authorize President and Residents John Delaney of the State University System to make technical adjustments to the 09-10 SUS fixed capital outlay legislative budget request as required.
Second. Any discussion? Any objection? Show it adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next grouping of motions deal with concurrency and release of funds to various jurisdictions, so I need to read these specifically into the record. The first is the motion to approve the allocation and authorize the Department of Education to release funds in the amount of $9,705,000 $893 to Lee County, Florida as full payment negotiated in the Campus Development Agreement between the Florida Gulf Coast University Board of Trustees and Lee County.
Second. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Second motion is to approve the allocation and authorization of the Department of Education to release funds in the amount of $6,278,791 to the City of Tallahassee as full payment negotiated in the Campus Development Agreement between the Florida State University Board of Trustees and the City of Tallahassee, contingent upon execution of the agreement.
So moved. Second. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third motion is to approve allocation and authorization of the Department of Education to release funds in the amount of $1,479,734 to Escambia County, Florida for full payment of the Campus Development Agreement between the University of West Florida Board of Trustees and Escambia County, contingent upon the execution of that agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
And Madam Chair, our final motion coming from the Facilities Committee related to Board of Governors regulation regarding leasing. It's a motion to approve public notice of intent to amend and renumber Board of Governors Chapter 17 regulations, administration of leasing program, including many of which are listed in the motion. So moved.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
Madam Chair, that concludes our report.
Thank you. Governor Tripp, report of the Audit and Compliance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit and Compliance Committee met yesterday afternoon and covered the following items. We recognize with deep appreciation the contributions of Lynn Pampas, who recently resigned from the board. And when she was with the board, she served as Vice Chair of the Audit and Compliance Committee. And she also chaired the task force on Florida A&M finance and operational control issues. Needless to say, Lynn will be deeply missed by all of us. At that time, I also suggested, after I learned the procedure, that Chair McDevitt consider appointing John Temple to replace Lynn Pappas as Vice Chair of the Audit and Compliance Committee. John is one of the few members on that committee who would be considered the financial expert. He has deep accounting background and has served as a CFO of a public company. And so Madam Chair said she would consider that and that request that we've made. Second item was the task force on Florida A&M University finance and operational control issues. There was a background presentation by Inspector General Harper, who presented an overview of the work done by the task force on the finance and operational control issues at FAMU, and emphasize how the task force achieved its primary goal of demonstrating the board's commitment to accountability by assisting Florida A&M University restore its public trust. I want to once again express our appreciation to the members of the task force for the fine work that they did. Following that, we had a final presentation by President Ammons on Florida A&M University's Corrective Action Plan. President Ammons presented an update on Florida A&M University's Corrective Action Plan, and the highlights included the following. The university has substantially completed the 6 items the task force and its consultants, Accretive Solutions, concluded needed improvement. President Ammons expressed his appreciation for the hard work of the task force, in particular the positive impact the report had in supporting the university's case in obtaining removal of probationary status imposed by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. In the recent Auditor General's operational audit report, the number of findings was reduced from 35 to 7. And I reviewed those 7 findings. Most of those were, by the time that report came out, and finalized, were completed, and some of those, one or two, needed another month or two. It was a timing issue for those to be completed. And so I'm very proud of the fact that it was a pretty clean audit, and we applaud you for that. The university expects the Auditor General to release their financial audit on Friday, January 30th, and I've been assured by President Ammons that they will, they know what's in that. They will be addressing any issues that are there on a timely basis. Next, we had a audit and compliance committee charter presented to us, and I would like to ask for approval of a notice of intent to have it come up at the next meeting, if I'm saying that correctly, Madam Chair. The committee considered a final draft of the Audit and Compliance Committee Charter, and we especially appreciate the comments and suggestions from university general counsels and the State University Audit Council. I personally talked with each chair of the boards of trustees audit committees, got their feedback. We talked with all of the general counsels, and we talked with all of the university audit councils, so we fully vetted this charter. I think that's probably why we had such a smooth meeting yesterday. There were no comments. Actually, the only comment came from our own board member, Tico, who corrected small little item for us. The committee unanimously approved the draft with some minor changes for consideration by the full board at its March 26th meeting. At our March meeting, the committee will consider a charter for the Office of the Inspector General and Compliance, and our plan is to present this charter notice of intent to the full board in June of '09. Would you like to?
Do you have a motion?
Yes, I would move the notice of intent to approve the final draft of the Audit and Compliance Committee Charter.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted.
And finally, the committee received and approved the Audit and Compliance Committee Work Plan, which shall serve as the blueprint for our goals and deliverables for the coming year. That concludes our report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Governor Tripp. Very thorough. Appreciate it. Is there any business anybody else wants to bring before the board? Oh, the Inspector
Madam Chair,
General has...
just a minor note. Since the charter is not a regulation, I just want to make a technical correction. There's no necessity for a notice of intent, even though we will consult with General Counsel to make sure. So that can proceed, but there is no technical requirement for a notice of intent since it's not a regulatory matter.
Okay.
Right? Just a minute.
All right. Anything else that anyone wants to bring up before? Yes, Governor Tripp.
I would just like to reiterate the fact that we will miss Lynn Pappas.
Yeah, definitely.
I got to serve with her a short time on the committee, and I understand the need for her to pay attention to some other things, but from our committee's point of view, she will be missed.
Yeah, and I'm moving that we present her with a resolution for her fine service.
Second.
And any objection? Hearing none, of course. But I too, as chair, am going to miss her because she was one of the most thoughtful, visionary, attention to detail, hardworking people that we've had on the board, and she will be missed very much. All right. Anybody else have any comments? Well, thank you all very much. I want to again thank Dr. Ammons for the hospitality and the lunch and the facility. Our next meeting is we're holding the date February 26th around 10 for a potential phone meeting. We may not need it. Our next in-person meeting will be March 25th, 26th in Tallahassee. At the moment, we think it'll be at the Turlington building. And during the interim, I suspect that we'll have a phone conference of the legislative committee, and we're going to we'll start giving out some assignments on what we're doing. Okay, thank you all very much, and we're a half hour ahead.